Who's a pretty dragon? Ooh, who's a pretty dragon? Yeah, you are. Oh, hey guys, it's Josh. Today on Showcase, we're continuing our trip through the Dungeons & Dragons Adventure System board games. If you want to see a breakdown of the rules of the games, we did that in the first episode. I'll put a link in the description in case you missed it. Last time, we did Castle Ravenloft, and tonight we take on the second game in the line, Wrath of Ashardalon. We'll talk a little bit about the game and then unbox it to see what's inside. I'll give you my opinion and we'll see how it stacks up against the others in the line. Every edition of Dungeons & Dragons has given us iconic villains. First edition gave us baddies like the Undying Vecna, the Demi-Lich Acererak, or the Vampire Lord Count Strahd von Zarovich, who got an entire episode of this very show. Second edition gave us some campaign setting specific baddies like Dark Sun's undead dragon powerhouse Dragoth and the Mad Mage Halaster Blackcloak of the Forgotten Realms. We'll see him again. Later edition gave us the likes of death cult leader Calorel the Vile and rebellious giant Imrith, who harbored a treacherous secret. But third edition gave us Ashardalon. Created by Bruce Cordell as the big bad of the first series of adventure modules for 3rd edition in 2000 and 2001, he is the fearsome, unkillable tyrant of flame and destruction. In his ascent to power, his very heart was removed and replaced with a Balor, one of the most powerful of all the demons. Not the heart of the Balor, the whole demon itself. That's how hardcore extra this dragon is. But Wrath of Ashardalon draws for more than just the big bad dragon. It also pulls heavily from the 1996 adventure, The Gates of Firestorm Peak, also by Bruce Cordell. The adventure was written to coincide with the Player's Option line of 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons products, but that's really not important to the story. What sets Gates of Firestorm Peak apart is it's the first mention of the Far Realm, a place beyond the D&D cosmology where aberrant alien horrors lurk, and the plot revolves around the opening of a gate to that nightmare plane. That plot is revisited here, only this time we also have Ashardalon. Wrath of Ashardalon is a 2010 game from Wizards of the Coast developed by Peter Lee. It's a cooperative game for 1 to 5 players, and you can play an adventure in about an hour. Though if you're learning or teaching or playing with kids or some combination thereof, you're going to want to plan on 2 hours. The cover art of this game really tells us what the title doesn't. What with that mean-ass dragon bearing down on us. It tells us we're going to have dungeons because it's a dungeon crawler, but truth in advertising, we will also have a dragon. Now, let's see, the sides of the box all look the same. On the back of the box, we have the blurb. Plunder the dungeons of Firestorm Keep at your own peril. In Wrath of Ashardalon, you play a heroic adventurer with magic weapons and amazing spells. You must explore the dungeons beneath the volcano where you will fight monsters, overcome hazards, find treasure, and eventually face the red dragon, Ashardalon. Are you ready for adventure? Wrath of Ashardalon features dungeon crawling action and terrifyingly fun quests designed for a single player or a cooperative group of 2 to 5 players. Each quest can be played in an hour or less, and the game includes campaign rules for longer adventures. I feel like I just said that. Down below we've got a list of everything that's in the box and a blurb about Castle Ravenloft. I love also, it says down here, stones not included, which the last game said that too, and I'm glad that it specifies because based on the weight, I really thought there was a few slabs of slate hiding away in there. So, let's bust this open. Ashardalon doesn't want us plundering its treasure. There we go. Alright, up first we've got the books. These are high glossed, good printing, just like the others. Pretty well set up, easy to read and understand. And let's see if it's got some neat artwork in the back like the last one did. Nope, doesn't look like it. We've got the adventure book, has all the adventures in it. Also pretty easy to read and understand. We have got some ad copy about 4th edition. And these are our tile sheets. It's not that many. These are our dungeon tiles. Characters are probably hiding in there somewhere. All the tokens, and these come on you know, the same cards, so they're nice and thick and sturdy, and the characters are probably hiding in there somewhere too. We'll take the cellophane off that in a bit. We've got all the cards. According to the back of the box, there are 200 of these. Now, the minis. This is my favorite part. So much plastic. And this is our large mini. So, let's get the plastic off these. Bunch of cool stuff. We've got Audiog. We've got frilled lizard, I think. It's a little mini baby beholder. And the characters, we've got some Grell, which look cool. I haven't seen minis of those before. We'll take a closer look at those in just a minute. And we've got our big one. Super cool looking. I'll get you a close-up of that. That's the big boy himself, I'm assuming. We'll take a closer look at these in just a minute. But take a look at the cards. Got our sequence of play cards, boons, adventure cards. These are our normal encounter cards. Got chamber cards. That's new. Here's our treasure, monsters, another encounter, more encounter, lots of encounter, and these are our character cards. We'll look at all this stuff more closely in just a minute. Set those aside, and we'll get these out. Tons of tokens. In any given game, you'll use about 2/3 of these, but they're all brightly colored and different sizes, so they're easy to sort ahead of time, which makes game setup pretty quick. We have traps, items, and healing surges. treasure tokens with a listed gold piece value on each. You'll use these if you're playing with the campaign rules, otherwise they're just kind of useless paper. Kind of like real money. Some monster tokens, which you'll only use occasionally. Over here we have adventure-specific tokens. We have character HP tokens, which are different than other games since both sides look pretty much the same, which is a bit of a pet hate of mine. Other games have the back of the token black or with a splash of red to show at a glance if you've been injured. With these looking the same on both sides, you can't tell injuries quite as easily. Lastly, we have condition tokens. Each of these games comes with 2 unique conditions to that game. This time around we have Dazed. You can only attack or you can only move or attack, not both. Discard this marker at the end of your hero phase. And Poisoned. You take 1 damage at the start of your hero phase. Discard this marker at the end of your hero phase if you roll a 10+. That means if you can't shake this one, you're going to keep taking damage, which is part of the increased difficulty of the game, but we'll get to that more later. We also have a thematically red D20. This game, like the others, has 40 dungeon tiles. These are what you flip as you explore. Of the 40 tiles, 16 of them are special tiles that you'll only use occasionally. So playing on a little over half the tiles might seem like it would make for less variety and more repetition, but this isn't really the case. You don't really notice the difference. The tiles are thick and sturdy, stand up well to extended use. I had a problem with a couple of the tiles warping. It wasn't severe, but it was noticeable enough to make it difficult to hook neighboring tiles to them, so make sure you toss the silica packet into the box, just to be safe. Of these 16 other tiles that I mentioned, there are 2 groups of 7 tiles that make up special sections of the dungeon that you might be looking for based on the adventure that you're playing. These chambers have special objectives that are detailed on special cards, and we'll look at the cards right now. Each of these games comes with 200 cards, with decks for each character detailing their powers, decks for encounters, monsters, and treasure. If you want to see how these cards work and play, you can check out my rules overview video. The link is still in the description. In addition, about a quarter of the cards are taken up with these special adventure-specific cards. These cards are chamber cards, which are used to determine a random objective when you're playing with the special chamber dungeon tiles. Boons, which are special rewards you can get while playing campaign mode. And cards detailing a number of NPCs who come into certain adventures. I really like these guys because they add a different element to the game, but they work just like monsters, except they're on your side. With the special cards, it cuts into the number of regular cards in the same way the special dungeon tiles cut into the number of regularly used tiles. But just like those, you don't really notice that there are less cards with the possible exception of the treasure, so you're more likely to see the same items come up regularly. Just like the other games, the cards are easy to read and understand, and they're well made. You can sleeve them if you want, but as long as you take care of the game, the components shouldn't wear out on you. Also, if you sleeve the cards, they won't fit back in the box. All the treasure cards are items, which is problematic. I'll touch on that in just a bit. But first, the characters. Like all these games, we get 5 new heroes ready-made for dungeon delving and monster slaying. We have Heskin, the dragonborn wizard. Caleth, an elf paladin. Quinn, a human cleric. Tarak, the half-orc rogue. And Vistra, the dwarf fighter. The 4 typical D&D roles of cleric, fighter, rogue, and wizard are all filled with a paladin thrown in for good measure. The oath and the measure, am I right? Huh? Obscure D&D paladin jokes. Each of the characters fills their role without being too basic. The fighter bashes monsters, the cleric heals allies, and the paladin bashes monsters while healing allies. The rogue and wizard do, rogue and wizard things. The characters have different abilities and playstyles than the same classes of characters in other games, so while they still feel like their class, they are unique. All of them have different playstyles, whether it's up close and personal or ranged problem solving, or in the case of the rogue, a combination of the two. Not all abilities are class-based, though. The dwarf is resilient, and the dragonborn can breathe fire, and I like to think he uses it for toasting marshmallows. I'm told this is still not correct, and he still uses it for toasting bad guys. I stand by the opinion that he could use it for marshmallows if he wanted. I also stand by making the same joke 2 episodes in a row. Each of these games has 42 minis.
42! It was a tough assignment.
42? Is that all you've got to show for 7.5 million years' work?
Remember what I said about repeating jokes? Monsters in Wrath of Ashardalon fit the motif of typical fantasy and D&D monsters, with orcs and kobolds and dwarves, and even some human cultists and mundane beasties like bears and giant snakes. But it ranges into the strange with some devils and alien abominations like the maddening grell and the amorphous nightmare that is the gibbering mouther. There's even an itty-bitty beholder. Look at this little guy. Who you cute little beholder? Who you cute little beholder? That's right, you are. You are. Yes, you are. So the minis this time seem sturdier than other games. It's not that they're made different, it's just that the creatures seem to have more plastic and less spindly bits, so they're a little heavier. This may just be my perception though. There are 5 heroes, 7 villains, counting large minis. Large minis? Yeah, whatever, large minis. And 30 other monsters. So final count is 4 small creatures, all kobolds, including the Dragon Shield villain, and 35 medium creatures, counting monsters, villains, and heroes. The large minis. Large minis? Yeah, I'm going to go with large minis. This time around is an Audiug, gross, and a Drake. The behemoth boss bitch this time around is Ashardalon. Castle Ravenloft set the standard for D&D Adventure System games, and Wrath of Ashardalon ups the ante. In all respects, it's more hardcore and intense than its predecessor, for both good and ill. First, the pros. Just like the other games in the line, the rules are simple and fun and easy to understand and learn, set up as a breeze, and it's never a chore to get to the actual playing of the game. New rules in the form of doors and chamber tiles make exploration a bit more dynamic, without changing the feel of the game at all. The NPC cards are cool and they give some much needed verisimilitude, so it feels like there's a town out there that you're actually saving from the dragon. The way chambers are handled with cards that give random objectives is a welcome use of the rules. The addition of doors and chambers is completely optional if you want a more basic play. The adventures are again a lucky 13 with an introductory tutorial, which we'll play next time. And they tell the fun, somewhat simplistic story of a band of adventurers who discover a dungeon, start delving, and then uncover the dangerous machinations of Ashardalon. Characters this time around are robust and varied with some interesting abilities that mostly focus on interactions with the environment, like the wizard's Mage Hand ability that allows him to check doors from a distance and avoid potential traps. Just like the other games in the line, Wrath of Ashardalon comes with over 40 miniatures. They're solid and well-detailed, and they grant a ton of value beyond the game if you're a hobby painter or use minis in a tabletop game. With a cover price of $60, finding this many miniatures for the price is nearly impossible. Not minis like these anyway. Overall, the game is fun. But now sadly, the cons, of which this game has many. The big one first is the game is tough. When I said it ups the ante in all areas, the difficulty is the one that's the biggest problem for me. It's not really possible to play the game and not be behind the power curve the entire time. Monsters are on average tougher than other games in the line, and it's possible to become overwhelmed very quickly, which makes managing monsters and encounters difficult. For example, one of the monsters, the Legion Devil, when revealed, it's not a single monster, but 3 at once. There are 2 monsters that under certain circumstances will reveal additional dungeon tiles, all with their own new monsters, and the potential for a cascade effect is very real. There are also encounter cards that open new tiles, and all of these new tiles are drawn from the bottom of the stack, making it take longer to explore and reach your objective. I could go on about the average hit points, attack bonuses, and damage, but it's sufficient to say these monsters are much tougher than those in the other games. The game also becomes needlessly complex with its use of treasure cards. There are no fortune cards this time around, and instead you get an item every time you draw a card. And with as long as these games can go, you can very quickly become inundated with new cards, making card management needlessly complicated. The treasure issue is mitigated in the campaign rules where, instead of drawing a card every time you kill a monster, you draw a treasure token that usually has a gold piece value amount on it. Between adventures, you use these coins to purchase treasure items drawn randomly from the deck. This is a neat idea, and it certainly reduces the number of cards that you'll have in play at any given time, but it also removes the one thing that might put your character ahead of the power curve. All told, this game is constantly like playing on hard mode, and there's no way to change that. So is it worth playing? Definitely. The issues I mentioned can make the game a bit more of a chore to play sometimes, but it's still miles ahead of some dungeon crawlers. If you like games that are tough but not necessarily unfair, then this is a great game for you. Personally, I'd rather be ahead of the curve than behind it, but that doesn't make a game unfun. It's just not as effortless as it could be. The new rules it introduces for exploration, the doors and the chambers, are fun, and they add some dynamics to play. The new system for campaign play, however, is interesting but a tad too clunky to really work in the formula. So, if you're a fan of D&D Adventure System, then this is a great game, but I don't recommend it as your first foray into the line. And now, the comparison. While this game is good and fun, the difficulty and added complexity puts it well behind the effortless fun of Ravenloft. Up next, we're going to take a look at Wrath of Ashardalon in play with the introductory adventure. After that, the next game we will be tearing into is 2010's Legend of Drizzt. I'll see you next time. Up next, we're going to take a look at